Hello, I am your host, Kathy Chester, and welcome to the Move It or Lose It podcast, a podcast about all things that move the mind, body, and soul. The Move It or Lose It podcast is for information, awareness, and inspirational purposes only. I am not a doctor, and I don't even play one on TV, so please consult your doctor before making any medical decisions. The views expressed by advertisers, guests, or contributors are their opinions and not necessarily the views of the Move It or Lose It podcast. Okay, so here is our part 2 with Dr. Jim Jackson, and we are continuing in with our long COVID and how we're dealing with the cognitive issues and all the other issues that come with this. So welcome back, Dr. Jackson. We're so happy to have you discussing all of the changes that take place when we do have long COVID and what that means, and all of the healthcare providers that are stepping in to take care of this. So we ended with our last one, kind of talking about people stepping in to kind of provide and helping out. And you were kind of asking healthcare providers that are listening in, jump in, don't wait till you're ready, because Lord knows we're never ready. You just got to jump in. Right. So I love that, because it is so important. And I found that even with what I do in trying to help them with movement is, now I'm trying to train other trainers to do that. And they're always like, I don't know if I could do it. Well, it is tiring, but it is with a heart of love and patience and care. And I just always think, if I got like this, I would want to be taken care of this way as well. Yeah. And so I think that that's the most important. And I guess I would love to know from you, with the support groups, what are some of what is the most joyful thing that you've had throughout all of this? What is something that really touched you?
It's a great question. We see the full spectrum of human emotion, I guess you'd say, in the support group. We see the highs and we see the lows, and we encourage people to share the highs and the lows. Don't hold back. If you're really thriving, we want to hear it. If you're struggling, we want to hear it too. I often think of a patient of ours in the support group who had COVID and was in the ICU. He was on a ventilator for a couple of months. He was so debilitated that when he left the ICU, he literally couldn't walk at all. He had to leave in a wheelchair. He lost all of his sight in one eye. He really had tremendous difficulties, and he somehow returned to work within a year, and not long ago was voted Teacher of the Year at his elementary school. Wow. It was really powerful. I mean, it was a really lovely testimony. People were crying on the support group call as he shared this. He's a very humble guy, reluctant to talk about himself. It was a really moving story of overcoming challenges, right? And reaching down deep and finding that maybe you've got some capacities that you didn't know that you had, right? That struggle, it's really hard, but it can produce lovely things. And it did for him. So that's one story of many. There are stories of real hardship also. And we give those our full attention, but this one was particularly inspiring. This idea that he had moved out of his comfort zone, he had done it with a lot of courage, and he was really rewarded. It's a beautiful story.
I love that one. It is a beautiful story. And I think so often, whether it's long COVID or a sickness, you kind of lose that confidence, and you don't feel like you're worth anything, or it's all gone and you don't have anything. So that's such a beautiful story of look was something so seemingly ugly. Look what beauty can come from that.
Exactly. Years ago, I was given a talk in New Mexico on PTSD. It's a long story, so I'll condense it. And I was talking about something called post-traumatic growth. And post-traumatic growth is this idea that you can have a trauma you experience, and through the struggle that you've had, there's some real growth that can occur. You can develop gratitude, you can develop a deeper appreciation for relationships, you can become more loving, post-traumatic growth. And I mentioned the phrase during that talk, beauty from ashes, And it's a phrase from the Old Testament. And
Isaiah.
Yeah, and there was a woman she was the person who was hosting this meeting. She was the person that had funded it. We had dinner that evening, and she said, I was struck by that comment, beauty from ashes, because I lost my husband tragically, and that's my email address, beauty from ashes. And
Oh,
it was really powerful.
yeah.
And we see it. We see
Yeah.
beauty arise from ashes, and it's a picture of what can happen when people receive the support and they're in the community that they need. Amazing, lovely, and hard things can happen, and it can be very inspiring.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing, is I really do believe that we can get through those hard things when we have the support. And we're trying to go through it alone is when we give up. And
Exactly.
so,
And I think your story and the story of other people with MS or epilepsy or whatever the chronic illness would be, it's really inspiring, and it's a good reminder that long before long COVID happened, there were people with chronic illnesses, right?
yeah,
There were people with
absolutely.
chronic illnesses, and they struggled often and figured out, however they figured it out, right? They figured out in many cases how to live fulfilling lives. And I think they have a lot of information. You have a lot of information that is useful for the journey that these long COVID patients are on. And
Yeah.
so even as I'm even as I'm talking to you and thinking in real time, I'm thinking, we need at Vanderbilt to do a better job connecting our long COVID patients with people with other chronic illnesses
You're
who are
funny.
figuring this out.
I was gonna say, I've already been asked to speak to some of them because it's what I do, because I do podcasts, and they're like, you seem like you're easy to talk. And I'm like, well, that's what I do. And
Yeah,
they're like, would you mind talking to? I'm like, not at all, because it is so encouraging for people for long COVID to understand that this is difficult. It is to have your world just around like that so quickly. But given time and given not giving up and having that person that you can contact and having your tools, your toolbox,
right.
you will get through this. Not
Yeah,
only that, but you will thrive. And not
yeah,
every day there'll be those bumps, but you've got to
exactly.
have your toolbox. You will get
Yeah.
through.
Yeah, I love it. I know when I got diagnosed with OCD, and I alluded to this earlier, but honestly, I thought, my life is over. My life's
Right.
effectively over. There is no way I am going to manage with this. And my psychologist, very loving and wise, I think, invited me to think a little differently about that. And I wasn't really ready to do that. It took
Right.
me probably a full year before I could even contemplate the possibility of accepting this. I just wanted to get rid of it. And when I accepted the idea that maybe I could live with this, I didn't have to like it, right? I didn't have
Right.
to like it. When I accepted the idea that maybe I could find a way to live with it, everything started to change for me
Yeah.
after that point.
Yeah. Agree 100%. I really love that. I wanted to, first off, about your Michigan comment. Why are you not a U of M fan?
I'm a little more blue collar, I think. I'm a
Ah,
little more of a Sparty. Went to sports camp
yeah.
in the 1980s in East Lansing.
What did
So
you football?
I played football.
Nice.
I wrestled. This was all in high school. I threw the shot put. But honestly, now that I live in SEC country,
Yeah.
I will cheer for everyone in the Big Ten except Ohio State.
Ohio State. All
Except
right,
Ohio
gotcha.
State. Yeah.
Yeah, no, my husband and I will cheer for each other's team, except it's a bad day when Michigan plays Michigan State.
Right.
They're
Yes.
in separate rooms, sometimes separate houses. It
Yeah.
depends. But when we play Ohio State, we are ready. We're good. We love each other
Yeah.
because we both want to smash Ohio State.
Everybody hates Ohio State.
Everybody
Yeah,
hates
that's for
Ohio
sure.
State.
Yeah.
So definitely. So I love what you guys are doing. What do you see? Here's the thing for me is, where do you see it going? Where do you see this ending? Do you see that more and more people will understand it and there'll be more and more support groups? And I can't see you leading every single support group in the world. I mean, maybe,
No,
but
no. It's funny, it's funny that you say that because We've got a waiting list of about 50 people, 55.
Do you really?
Yeah, we do in our support groups. And so recently I said to one of my wiser colleagues, I said, I think we should add 2 or 3 more support groups. And he said, no, we are not adding more support groups. So I think hopefully that's a model that is going to catch on.
Yeah.
It's been slow to catch on, but it's certainly not something I can do. You're right.
You have to do some commercials.
Yeah.
Have you experienced?
Yeah,
like
exactly. But I do think, a couple things. I think there are really bright people who are working really hard to develop therapeutics for long COVID, and we'll see what happens with that. Obviously, we're hopeful. We're all hopeful about that. Randomized trials and various scientific pursuits related to this medication or that maybe will work. But we've attempted that with Alzheimer's disease. We've attempted that with cancer. Those are the right attempts, but it's very rare that we found a pill that would eradicate everything, right? That would eradicate.
We saw
everything.
what Adderall did.
Yeah, right. So I think this hopeful message that this is really hard and challenging, and you can find a way, not just to survive with this, but to thrive.
Yeah.
I trust that message is really going to grow, and that people are going to start to understand that there's a way of moving forward with long COVID. One thing that has happened that has been really encouraging, I think, during the pandemic is that I think it has made mental health in particular much more acceptable to talk about, right?
Yeah.
People used to talk about that kind of in hushed tones. I think we're having really candid conversations now about mental health. So that's one good thing that has happened. So,
and then it's not a stigma.
There's not.
It. You know what I mean? That it can come from childhood trauma. I had childhood trauma.
Right.
And I think I think before it was like mental health meant that you were in a loony bin.
Right, exactly.
And it's like, no, that is not what it means. And just sit down and listen. And that I think has been, again, there were some horrific things, obviously, or you wouldn't be doing this with COVID. But there were some beautiful things that happened too. There were some people that actually listened and sat down. So I think there were, like you're saying, there were some beautiful things that happened.
I'm very hopeful. I'm hopeful that we are going to introduce people to an idea that they can live rich and meaningful lives. I'm hopeful that the lessons that other people with chronic illness have learned can be applied to help people thrive. I'm hopeful that the long COVID clinics, there are about 300 of them in the United States, hopeful that they'll continue the good work that they're doing. I'm hopeful that we'll find a way to scale the rehabilitation that we're doing so that it can impact large numbers of people, because I think rehabilitation is really the key. So
I think it's very important.
Yeah.
Now, another question for you, Dr. Jackson. Where would people find a long-term clinic that's a long COVID clinic that's near them? Where would they be able to find that?
Yeah, so if you go online, there's a website, Survivor Corps, CORP. So I think it's survivorcorps.com or Survivor.
I will have this on at the bottom of it. So don't stop your car. Don't worry. It'll be at the
Survivor Corps. And on Survivor Corps, there's a map, and you can click on the map, and it's a map of all the 50 states, and it will let you know where that long COVID clinic is. And I think if people can go to a long COVID clinic in the Midwest, there's one at Northwestern, there's one in Ann Arbor, et cetera. There really are people who are particular experts in the sorts of symptoms that people have who have long COVID, whether those are cardiac, whether those are neurologic, whether those are autoimmune. There are specialists and often subspecialists, and I think they can direct people in the direction they need to go. There's a chapter in my book that talks about how to engage physicians about long COVID. About how to advocate for yourself. in the context of long COVID. And I think it's really important. I think the hard thing here, Kathy, is that there are a lot of patients, as we discussed, who are cognitively impaired. And so asking that cognitively impaired, vulnerable patient to be a big, robust advocate for themselves, that's a big ask. That's a big ask. So Clearing the Fog talks with a lot of specificity about, hey, here's what the first session with your doctor could look like. Here are the questions you want to ask. Here's how to be prepared. I think it's really important, but difficult.
I think that was, if I'm not mistaken, in the first chapter.
Yes, that's right.
And I believe that, and I love that, because being chronically ill, you know, in the beginning, I thought I got it. I can just do it on my own. And then you realize you leave and you forgot half the questions that you needed to ask.
Exactly.
And so, not to mention, how in the world do you know how to advocate for yourself?
Exactly.
You know, when you're a mom or a dad, you know for sure how to advocate for your spouse or your kids, but you've got to bring someone with you.
Exactly.
And then you've got to tell that person what you need. Like you said in the first, like what you need to be, help talk with them. These are the questions I need to know, so that they know what to write.
You do. And it raises a whole nother, I think, important issue, big issue. And, you know, obviously my office is not going to show up on your podcast. It's a good thing, because my office is
No, it will. It's going on YouTube.
It will. All right. Very good. Well, this current view doesn't look too bad, but there are parts of my office that are a little messy. And what you would see in my office are stacks of papers, and some of those stacks of papers are disability applications. And disability is a really big issue in the context of long COVID. It's a huge issue. And that's another issue where, you know, really feels challenging, a little bit backwards, where we're asking people with significant cognitive impairment to fill out really complicated forms, where so much is at stake. I often, as their healthcare provider, have no idea how to fill those forms out, right? So there's a lot in the system, I think, that is backwards, and I think it behooves us as healthcare providers to try to figure out how to help. So I think one of the contributions I'm aware of making every week is, hey, I'm going to help you fill out these disability forms, because they're really important. One more example, though, of this idea that the people who need it the most are often the people less equipped to be able to do it.
Yes. So would you say that, I would think like at least once a month or once every other week, that specific doctors, specific people, not even doctors, in what they do, like what I do, what other people do, could just take that time and give that time away for long. I never can understand that. And maybe that's just my personality, but to give that time away, to give that resource, this is what I can give. This is what you can give. And if we were to do that for 2 hours, and to give long COVID patients, to give other people that what we have, we would get a lot further. So
I think it's a really lovely idea, and something that I really do practice, and many others do. I think one area where we have not seen that so much, that has been really hard, is in the mental health space. In Nashville, for instance, if you're going to see a psychologist, almost all of them have chosen to work outside of the insurance system. They don't take insurance, and that's their prerogative. I don't have any issue with that. They've decided to do that, often because insurance companies are not good partners, right? They're hard to deal with. But what that means is that if a patient wants really high quality mental health care, and they can't pay $170 out of their pocket, they're not getting that care at all. They're not getting that care. So our support group is free of charge. We don't charge anybody. People can attend as long as they want. We're attempting in that model to offset a bit the fact that mental health care too often is just not available. So I think it's really the classic, there's that old saying, the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. And I think we see that people who have a lot of resources to throw at long COVID, and it's great that they do, they tend to do better, right? They can go to the Mayo Clinic. They can engage in an experimental treatment. They can hire someone at their house to help them stay on track, right? They can figure it out, even though they're still suffering. People without resources, they're the ones who fall through the cracks. They lose their job, and now they've lost their house, and now they're sleeping in their car, and it all runs downhill. So I think we have to really have a heart for the vulnerable ones among us here, because if everyone else is struggling, they are particularly struggling. And it's really sad to see. I often feel very helpless, and it's a tough situation to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know for me that when you're figuring this out, I want to be a part of it, because that breaks my heart as well. Really and sad. I end up, I'm sure you do the same. I end up giving away everything. I'm like, okay, I'll help you. And then my husband looks at me like, are you making anything? Probably not, but I don't know what to do. Because
I will say, I turned 55, last month. So class of 1986, been a long time, turned 55. And I do think, as I've gotten older,
hey, you're a couple of years younger than my husband, so you're not bad.
I see. So as I've gotten older, I think I'm a little more philosophical, and I think you start to realize that what matters at the end of the day is relationships and people, right?
Absolutely.
It's not what kind of car you drive. It's not how big your boat is. It's really what sort of contributions are you making in the lives of people.
Right.
And I think for me, at least, and clearly for you and others, this isn't a job as much as it is a calling. It's a privilege and a calling. And I would invite people to listen to the stories of long COVID survivors if they haven't done that. And they would be similarly moved, I think, to action, because these stories are so authentic and they're so genuine and raw. And when you hear them, you just really have to help. You have to help.
Yeah. Well, I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed being able to get to know you and to be able to just know what you're doing. And I'm going to promote this all over the place. So I hope that many will listen and just really understand what it is that these long COVID survivors are really dealing with. And I know that for my part, I have a women's support group with MS, and they very much have really understood, not some because family members have it, but really are understanding and trying to get their hands around how they can help. And so we just really, really appreciate what you're doing. And just so thankful for your heart and for the support groups, and really praying that many will come around and many will see the importance of this and will continue to help you with this, and the doctors that are helping.
Well, thank you. I'll look forward to catching up with you if I'm on the east side of the great state of Michigan. And I appreciate being with you. And in closing, I will just say, go green.
Go blue. Well, thank you so much. I hope you guys enjoy this, and everything will be on the bottom of the show notes. So you do not have to stop your car. They'll be on the bottom of the show notes. So one quick thing, how can everybody get a hold of you if they want to get a hold of you?
Yeah, so I have a website, www.james.c.jackson.com. So someone can email me there if they want. They can reach me at my Vanderbilt email address, james.c.jackson@vumc.org. That would be the easiest place. They can find me on Twitter. I really take seriously the fact that when patients follow up with me, when people struggling follow up with me, I've got an obligation to respond. So if you send me an email, your listeners send me an email, I'll be really happy to send an email back. And I'm keen to help in any way I can. So if people want to reach out to me, I really welcome that, Kathy.
Good. I have no doubt. Well, thank you so much. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this. I can't wait to hear the feedback, and have a great day, guys. I'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye. Well, thank you so much for joining us today on Move It or Lose It podcast, where you can again find us every Tuesday, and also wherever you like your podcast, whether it's Apple, Spotify, Stitcher. Join us on that, and we can't wait to see you again. We're going to have a lot of exciting guests and working together And as always, you'll hear us say at the end of every podcast, we are stronger together. So let's do it. Let's become stronger together. Have a great day.